Hey, what's up, Tom?
Good morning, afternoon, evening.
All right.
Malik Russell, Melky J.K. Russell is present and accounted for. How you doing this morning?
Hey, man, I'm hanging in there. It's
All right.
early. It's the weekend, so
We're in the sanctuary of the soul, so let's make it happen. I promise not to pass the collection plate following, but I might send you my cash app uh, number when I'm finished. We're going to talk about Earth as a school, and particularly kind of unpack a few chapters if time permits on your one of your books, The Infinite Everyday Understanding, and when things ain't all good. So I really appreciate your taking the time. If I can just mention, given all the stuff that's going on in the world, in terms of the Middle East and Ukraine and elsewhere, it's good to kind of not have to talk specifically about babies being burned and people being held hostage. But in a way, I suppose that even this discussion relates to that reality in some way. So because we all let's hope that some of us are learning from this experience. But let's jump right in. Earth. I want to talk about Earth as a school was one of the chapters, and then if time permits, we'll go to a few others like can we prepare for life and I just love the chapter headings and life comes in waves and pain and also the ultimate goal of life is disillusionment. And if time permits, we might even kind of talk about uh, Melky's next chapter. but uh, tease us before we get started, Melky, with how folks can kind of find you and even acquire your wisdom for the super nominal cost of your various publications. What's the best place for folks to kind of
sure, sure. And let me say, before we start, as you agree, I'm lending my voice to the millions of other people around the world that are calling for an immediate ceasefire in Palestine and Gaza. And so I just wanted to put that out there that
yes,
this is a time for peace, and I'm joining the call of millions of others and demanding that there is peace there in Gaza and Palestine. Um, now, if folks want to reach me, they can visit my website first. That's a new word media.com, and that's ANUWORD media, one word.com. If you want to follow me on social media, you can follow me on Twitter, which is Melky J. Russell. You can follow me there on Twitter. I'm also on LinkedIn and Facebook as well. If folks,
excellent. Excellent. You mentioned in Earth as a school that many belief systems, and I love the way you phrase belief systems believe because that gives a personal touch to even belief systems are created by, in some ways, humans. So many belief systems believe that once a person's physical form passes or expires, they return back to the all. And I was thinking, Melky, when you mentioned the all, some of my friends talk about the no thing or everything is everything is everything. So whether when you say the all, it seems to me that has a resonance that can kind of connect with various interpretations and related interpretations. But many belief systems believe that once a person's physical form passes or expires, they return back to the all. Let's kind of jump in. Let's jump in with that.
sure, sure. And what I mean by the all is it was looking at the idea of duality. And in many religions, there's a goal to kind of eliminate duality, to become one, integrated with the universal force. And we use the term the all because it's really beyond humans' comprehension
Hmm.
to understand what this other side totally is. Is it one or is it all collective? It is so you use the all as kind of a capture phrase because it is it is beyond anything that we can imagine. And some people look at it like the subjective side versus the objective side. Before things come into existence, what exists there? Ancient Egyptians, they call it new or none. This primordial thing that existed. But where did that come from? What existed before that? And so um, my belief system is basically that once we end our physical life, we transition to another existence. There is really no death. There is just gradual transitioning, like energy. Energy cannot be destroyed. It can be converted, or changed, but energy can, and we are forms of energy, if people want to look at it that way. So there's just a continuation and a reintegration. And in the most of the African ancestral teachings or African traditional religions, they believe that those who pass on become ancestors, and those ancestors return through the same bloodlines of the same people. So all of us are connected in a way to, our ancestors, which of course were the original people on the planet, the Africans that came out of Africa, say 250, 300,000 years ago, that colonized the entire world. So they colonized the entire. So our lineage in that sense, and I think Dr. Bruce Bynum talks about this a little bit, that collective consciousness goes back all the way that far. So we can, in a spiritual sense or energetic sense, we're part of that continuum and that collective. And we manifest here, as I talk about in Infinite Everyday Understanding. I believe we manifest here as part of the all, in a sense to learn all that there is to learn, to be able to experience things that that the all cannot, all being beyond comprehension, infinite. How can it experience failure? How can it experience the physical aspects of life, limitation? And we're part of that experience individually and collectively, because in some senses, in some belief systems, you go to different places, there is no individual, there is only the collective. And each member of the tribe or group is part of a collective. And so they're one. And some groups, I think it's the Borgs or whatever, Star Trek or whatever.
Right.
So it's that collective existence that exists in the same way that when we look at our bodies, we know there's hundreds of billions of cells that exist within our body and that make up the one individual. And so there is no individual. And so when I talk about, Earth being a school, I talk about it as us being able to experience certain things that only we can experience in a human form, like limitation and, bumping your toe, on a pole or bed or whatever. That type of pain that is really, doesn't exist in a non-physical realm. And I talk about that as just, part of that collective of growing and expanding and returning back to the source.
I really appreciate what you mentioned, because even today, as you talked about the killing and murder that's taking place, well, it has always taken place, I suppose, in some way on the planet. But it's just so good to reflect. And I really hope that people understand and appreciate, whether they disagree 300% with everything you've said. From my standpoint, it's clear that we have to kind of perhaps consider another way of looking at things, given the Cain and Abel thing that's been kind of manifesting for so long. Even when you were talking earlier, Melky, and you referenced by innuendo in my mind the word epigenetics. We're hearing that more and more, that there's our most banal or just traditional scientists are kind of talking about that the memory, the past, the memory, and the memory of the past certainly influences our perception of the future.
Right. And, and there are many different ways to look at it, many different approaches, spiritual, philosophical, scientific, and this whole idea of us, existing as one, and even looking at what's going on today. One of the passages I have on my Twitter account is a quote from Dr. Martin Luther King when he's talking about the war in Vietnam. And he's having a direct link to the violence that's occurring in our own communities. And I think that's still true today, that we are one, but we are collective. And so violence anywhere, is a threat to freedom everywhere.
Mhm.
And so violence happening in Chicago or Newark is in some ways or form, it is connected to the violence that is happening in Gaza, the Middle East, or Sudan, or Haiti. It's all collected together. And I think, before we talked about, what are some strategies that people can use to take, paradigms from the spiritual realm and apply them in a practical and theoretical way. And and part of it is that idea that, we can collectively address the issue of peace. We can collectively utilize, this collective consciousness and connect with each other and push for these ideals, these so-called spiritual ideals in the physical realm. And if you look at it historically, we know that it does not take everyone, but we know that small collective groups of well-minded individuals have changed history.
Mhm.
So we don't need to have 100% universal unity, but a small critical mass of individuals together can impact the entire world. And that's what we have to understand. There will be people that are part of that group, some call the elect or whatever, that, the Du Bois called it the talented 10th. Some people that will be the vanguard in
Mhm.
terms of implementing new ideas and ways to approach, age-old problems.
I'm chatting with Malik Russell, and the author of several books, but particularly we're talking today about infinite understanding when things ain't all good. Let's kind of stay on the Earth is a school thing for it's a few more minutes before we maybe go to can we prepare for life. Uh, you talk about this, I won't say rat race or that we're in, or this maze, but the escape from the maze, or the reinvention, or knocking down the walls, something like the Berlin Wall. What are you suggesting that might be possible in that regard?
Um, I think that it's important for us not to underestimate ourselves or our collective power.
Mm-hmm.
And and I can look at it in an allegorical sense. I can look at just the birth of hip hop.
Mm-hmm.
Look at, hip hop that started with a small group of people in the South Bronx in New York, and now it's universal.
Mm-hmm.
It came from nowhere. It was the rejected stone that became the cornerstone. In that same sense, can we be able to enact philosophies and strategies that bring the world together? And in the physical world, see what we're used to in the non-physical world, we're not used to limitations. We're used to being able to bring things into existence, to think and be all at one time. And in the physical world, we're introduced to the idea of limitation, and that's part of learning. But as I talk about in my book 21 Hustle, pulling from the book the Kabbalion, you address the lower laws, the physical laws, by appealing to the higher laws.
Mm.
So therefore, with that particular strategy, if we embark on that particular strategy, we can address some of these challenges that we face physically by appealing to the higher laws. And we know that higher, we're talking about vibration, we're talking about energy, we're talking about how people vibrate, at what speed are they vibrating, and that ability to vibrate at faster speeds. Mentally, we're talking about being able to enter different dimensions beyond the physical realm, and that's what we talk about. And when people start talking about metaphysical, they're talking about greater than physical. Mm-hmm. So we know that as human beings, we can't exist in that metaphysical or that spiritual realm forever because of the restrictions of our existence as humans. But we can access that energy at times. We can't reach transformative points in terms of our own development and collective development, and utilize that to bring about change, in the physical realm that we're in. So while we're not these beings that no longer know limitation, we are in a place where we can access that realm. And that's pretty much what, the idea of spirituality is all about. Mm-hmm. How do we access that power? How do we access that realm? In the Ifa tradition, they call it, Ashe, power, that transformative power the energy. I think they call it Shakti in Hindu. So how do you access that power that exists? To apply it to the things that we're facing today.
I love that, and even as you were chatting, my mind went to yoga and meditation and Tai Chi and the martial arts, etc. So there seems to be indicators if we look at our past, I guess, about your physical health. And I was also impressed when you mentioned, and I really appreciate the intentionality when you mentioned vibration and energy, because even if someone that has listened to the show thus far totally disagrees with what you've said, I would say to them, even if you look at proton therapy is now a new thing in terms of the new enhanced radiation, so that they're understanding that the protons vibrate and the cellular kind of mechanism. So we're trying to divine these instruments that kind of maximize the wave theory and your cellular structure, which indeed that does vibrate. So it seems that in some ways things are kind of coming together.
Yeah, vibranium does exist. Right.
Well, and I mean that's why I love when you see when you reference by nuance the creative impulse, and which is, I mean, who was it? Not Michelangelo, but the other from the Renaissance era, the guy that Da Vinci, in terms of drawing an airplane before even anyone had an idea that airplane is possible. So I think that's a good example where our mind can give us visions that can become reality, and it just takes it takes some committed folks. Can we prepare for life? I mean, this is what really kind of all these subtopics are key, but can we prepare for life? And you talk a little bit about the expanded definition of what life is, whether we can see it or not. Let's take the deep dive a little bit on can we prepare for life?
Right. And in my opinion, I do not believe that we can prepare for life. I believe that when we come here into the physical realm, we're here to learn. That's why Earth is a school. We're here to learn particular lessons that maybe we didn't learn in another existence or lifetime, or that maybe we just need to know to evolve to a higher dimension. So life in itself is not just that it's a challenge. It's really a challenge to move us on to a higher level of existence, a higher level of consciousness, a reintegration back into the all. That's really what this experience is about. And it's just like being pregnant or being in love. You can't halfway do it. You know what I'm saying? So and it's like the idea of people talk about the matrix and an illusion and whether we're living in a simulation. And I'll deal with that. We'll deal with that later when we talk about disillusionment. But the thing is that you have to, in order for us to get the lesson, we have to be there. We have to be in it. We have to believe that this is the sole reality in order to get the lesson. So it's like being pregnant. You can't be halfway pregnant. Either you're pregnant or you're not. And if you're in love, you don't really know what love is until you've been in love. So the way that we are brought into this world, the way we grow up, our early life positions us to really get the lessons that we're set here to accomplish. Because if you look at anybody today, in terms of what they're doing, if you look at their youth and the way they grew up in their past, there will be a direct connection to what they're doing now. Like there's a direct connection to my experience in terms of standing up, for the Black community, fighting for our rights, in terms of fighting against racism. I remember when I was in a pre-kindergarten, and I think I was attending, it was Columbus School at the time, which is used to be off of Grand Avenue. And I remember I was in the classroom, and it was a majority white classroom. I'm like 4 or 5. I don't know how I remember this, but I remember it. And me and a young kid, he was white, I was Black, and we decided to play Lone Ranger. And so first time I was going to be Tonto, he would get on my back and I'd be the horse. He had his fun and yippee-yay-yay and all the other stuff, right? And then it was my turn. And then I got on his back and I was the Lone Ranger, Bass Reeves, whatever.
Mhm.
And after about 30 seconds, he fell on the floor and started crying. And all I remember is the teacher singling me out and throwing me out of the classroom, sending me down to the office. So this is like pre-kindergarten, And I don't remember this part, but my mother tells me that she said that they actually sent me home. And this is pre-kindergarten. So I'm 5 years old. I'm walking down Grand Avenue all the way to James Street at 5 years old in the middle of the day. So that experience, it put me in a place where what I'm doing today makes sense. And there's a number of other experiences, that I had where I just faced racism head on. It was like something that I could not avoid.
Mhm.
Even when I tried to work on Wall Street. And later I found that after graduating from Brandeis and interviewing at Harvard Business School, and I wanted to work on Wall Street, and I was applying for jobs down there. And then 60 Minutes did an episode where they showed that a lot of the human resources firms, that they were steering people of color away from the jobs at Wall Street. They had code names. So I'm caught in the middle of that. And I call up the attorney general. And I said, I want to make myself available if you need somebody. So those things came to me regardless of what I wanted internally, because if I had my goal would have been to play professional basketball. Not professional basketball, I would have been a rap star. So, like Dave Chappelle, my next third option would have been to sell crack, So, but that didn't happen. I was constantly placed in a position where I had to deal with racism head on. And I tell people this is why I'm the person who I am. And so in each of our lives, we're placed in these positions to get the greater learning, and in the learning that we came here to attain in the Earth School. And it's not always a superficial, learning. Like when I was younger, I thought becoming a father that, okay, and the lesson was to be a better father than my father. But as I've gotten older, I realized that, okay, that really wasn't the lesson. The lesson was understanding maybe what my father went through and how tough it was to even with things going well, even with me being educated and everything, how tough it is to be a father, and particularly looking at my father growing up in the middle of segregation. So the lesson is never just a simple lesson.
Yes.
It gets deeper and deeper as we unravel, why we're here. So we can't really prepare for life because life is designed to come at us, in a way that presses our buttons, in a way that forces us to dig deep in terms of who we are as an individual and the things that we find as challenges. And like I say in all of my books, this is really the subconscious in a way, because who or what knows the things that presses our buttons better than we do. And so we co-create these experiences,
Fascinating,
expand and evolve our consciousness, and to move on and learn the greater lesson, of it. And so that's why we really can't prepare for life, but we can live in the moment, live in the now. And as we learn more, we begin to expand. That's what we can do is learn the lesson. If we don't learn the lessons and they keep coming back and they're more intense and intense, but everything that we do is kind of a setup for us to get those lessons. And oftentimes they're under the guise of another lesson or a bigger lesson that we assume. So in that sense, we have to look at our challenges as just that. They're challenges, they're opportunities for growth. They're not judgments from the universe or God. They're actually opportunities for us to expand who we are.
So from the self-actualization, so that falls into the self-actualization category, but being conscious and not denying the opportunities and and self and actually intentionally opening up those doors and walking through it. And sometimes, as I think you're saying that sometimes those doors might require walking on some hot coals,
Right.
but finding out, I was thinking, Melky, as you were chatting about the butterfly situation, and butterfly was another form of existence prior, and and then we had some of the biblical references about you can't put, what is it, old wine
New bottle.
or
Oh, new wine.
new wine into old bottles. So it seems to me we've had these axioms for a while. I'm just as a personal note, because I want to continue on the life thing before we come to life comes in waves and pain. This time of the year, my father passed away. So just as you were chatting, I was thinking about my memory of that, and I just found out more about him in the last 10 years. That he passed away in 1967, but I've just in the last 5 or so years have found out more about him going through newspaper.com, because I was in my teens, 17 when he passed away. But yeah, it's been reflecting on your memories and kind of taking the deep dive and locating yourself in your current, trying to describe or think about your current arc and your previous arc. And sometimes those arcs are not a straight line, as you've also shared. So I really appreciate what you just said. As just before we go to life comes in waves and pains, I really, when you mentioned Bass Reeves, just kind of share with people who he was, because people, we know about like Jack Daniels, that we did the Jack Daniels thing before Jack Daniels kind of took it, and obviously we still patronize Colonel Sanders, although we were been cooking chicken for a long time. But when you threw in Bass Reeves, people might not realize that there are some stories that are still have not been buried. There's so many things we're still uncovering about our history and our glory. But Bass Reeves was who?
Well, Bass Reeves, and there's probably like two television series on right now, discussing the life of Bass Reeves. Bass Reeves was an African American. He was, I think he had some Native American lineage as well, and he was enslaved. He later became free, and he's the character. He became a lawman, and he's the character that the idea of the Lone Ranger was based on. Of course, they made him white, but he was that dude. He was, that Lone Ranger.
Yes.
He was a black man, and so there's now stories out trying to tell his story and aspects of his story, but it goes into a deeper dive in terms of the impact that African Americans had on the West. The fact that the majority of what we term cowboys were black men. That's why they call them cowboys, because they were trying to denigrate them by not calling them men. But that's the impact that a lot of African Americans have had in terms of the development of this country, the untold story. That's why Black history is important, and knowing ourselves and knowing who we are, knowing the contributions, knowing that in places like Los Angeles was actually founded by Black and Latinos. They were the people that founded Los Angeles. So it's kind of ironic today that people talk about immigration and things like that. And it wasn't the only city, people like DeSable in Chicago. A lot of these places were found by Blacks, and Blacks have made contributions from the beginning of this country and previous to the existence of the United States to, the onward struggle and the building of this nation. And so that's just one of the countless stories that are not common knowledge.
Indeed. And that's really the beauty of chatting with you and others, and us maximizing this social media opportunity, for better or for worse, to kind of to tell our story. Just before we go to life comes in waves and pain, I wanted to also thank you for lifting up your pre-K experience. I'm going to be doing a show in a few weeks with Georgia Goldbaum here in New Haven, and George is involved with an umbrella group of daycare centers, and just the evidence as we speak in 2023 of the implicit bias and the abuse that some Black children are still undergoing in daycare settings that might not be culturally sensitive. still to this very day. So I really appreciate your lifting that up. Life comes in waves and pain. And I want people, well, I can't speak for you. I can't say that you're not a masochist. So I don't want people to think that you're a masochist, but talk about life comes in waves and pain. And I don't want people to think that you're a member of Marat Desaad or whatever the French guy was. So delve and clear it up, Mel, clear it up.
No, no. I mean, black people in this country, we know life comes in waves and pain. You know, that's unfortunate part of our experience. You know, in this country, constant waves. I just read a story about this family in North Carolina that you know their ancestor had bought this land near a swamp. They cleaned it out and they were on the coast and recently local authorities were trying to take their land from them. And many of us that have, you know, Southern roots, and particularly all of us, we know the stories of our land being taken by white individuals,
Yes.
by the system, by races. So on multiple levels, life continually comes at us and pain continually comes at us. And the whole point of it is understanding that life is more, it's like, you know, like the ocean.
Mm.
You imagine you're on a surfboard.
Mhm.
The water is never still. You know, there's constantly one wave after another wave coming, and you're trying to ride those waves.
Mhm.
We've been convinced, we've been conditioned on a narrative where, okay, once you get to this point in the water, everything is going to be smooth, and it doesn't, and life doesn't work that way. And so there are people, I mean, we all, I forgot the TV series that used to come on, Untold, I think it was Untold, but they would tell the stories of all these different music stars, and all of them kind of had the same type of theme, you know, like Joseph Campbell's telling of the myths. They all had a theme where they were all struggling. They became successful. They became great. They became rich. Then they declined.
Mm.
And you know, so it's like that. Even getting everything that you want, you know, is it enough? Does that, you know, how many rich people do we see that still are not satisfied? Still do not have. Excuse me one second. Can you hear that noise?
Nothing. I don't hear anything I don't hear any ambient noise.
Okay, I have noise here. I don't know if you're hearing it.
Oh, okay.
But the whole point is that you know, things in the physical world do not save us. They do not completely satisfy us. We can have everything that we want and still be unsatisfied in some sense. And the idea and the narrative that's pushed is that if you get enough of this or that or this, then you're going to be happy. And happiness comes internally. Happiness comes with you recognizing yourself and being satisfied with who you are as an individual and the things that you've been able to accomplish, and just acceptance. And so that life comes at waves is really how life works. And I think when people understand it that way, they go a little bit easier on themselves, because we are our worst critics. We are our harshest judges. You know, we can be the most merciful with everyone else, but we can be brutal on ourselves. You know, we can have forgiveness for everyone else, but we don't have forgiveness for ourselves. We hold ourselves sometimes to, you know, unattainable, you know, levels.
Yes.
And standards and absurd standards. I think about some of the things that I was trying to do when I was young, and I was like, okay, that was totally absurd. Why would I even assume that was possible? And then you're penalizing yourself when you don't get there. And so I put that in the book so that people could understand that, you know, there's no peaceful part of life where everything is just settled. There's good times, there's bad times, but the waves continue to come. And we can't change life, but what we can do is adapt our thinking about life so that we're just more secure when the waves come. When the waves come, we know it's a wave. Okay, I got to ride this out and continue moving on. but we're not defined by the waves. You slip off the board or whatever, you get back. And so that's just a way of telling people to kind of be easier on yourself. Be
Indeed.
less judgmental of yourself, because you cannot judge yourself anyway, because you're going to get it wrong. So be less judgmental. Don't try to judge yourself. Understand that everybody struggles. And when I was first writing my book, I didn't really understand it, but I was in a bad place where I was struggling. I had lost a job and separated from family, everything. And I was, calling out to the Creator. I was calling out to, to my belief system for mercy and understanding. And I remember this guy came up to me in the record store. He was asking me all this information, and I was just like, dude, I don't work here. Go ask somebody else or whatever. But it kind of stood out to me, because I was like, okay, how can I be asking the universe for this type of mercy and compassion? And yet, so here it is where a person is walking right up to me, and I'm really being dismissive and rude to this person. So that's the sense of, we can't get what we're not willing to give.
Say some more about that, because you've indicated that, and obviously we had a few years ago the what was that, the attraction. There was a popular book and that people were reading, but just say some more about that. Your vibration can attract or distract. It can be helpful or negative to you.
Yeah, and I think you're talking about I think the laws of attraction.
The secret was
secret, and part of that is and there's two themes to that. One is recognizing that that we're all connected, and so sometimes we have to mirror the things that we are seeking. We're seeking compassion. We're seeking charity. Then sometimes we have to mirror that. And then that works on a number of different levels, because then you start talking about the subconscious. And we know that the subconscious really rules things. It brings forth the things that we are vibrating on into the conscious life. So, so in terms of our subconscious, you can practice certain things, certain ways of thinking that will then manifest in your physical life, which is what the idea of the secret is, and laws of attraction, that you're programming your subconscious mind. And I've done some study on it beyond those aspects, because what we realize, and this comes from studying racism, what we realize is that almost 90 or something, 95% of our actions happen on a subconscious level first. Everything happens even before we become consciously aware of it. This is why when you're talking to people about racism and implicit bias, they call it unconscious bias. This is why you don't, and they'll say, well, I'm not racist. Right, because you're not aware of it. You're not aware of your racism because it's unconscious, but it's impacting, if you're a police officer, it's impacting the fact that you're drawing your gun a lot quicker when it's a black man. So it manifests in the physical sense, what we think on the subconscious level, and we're often not aware of it. And so we have to be able to take control of our subconscious, to program our subconscious with positive thoughts, positive actions, in order for it to manifest on the conscious level. And there's a lot of study in that, but everything happens on that subconscious level, and it responds quicker than when we become aware of it. So that is a strategy many people employ to kind of change their lives.
Yes.
Hey, I think negative, but let me start utilizing positive sayings to myself and reinforcing that to my subconscious mind.
And just before we go to the ultimate goal of life is disillusionment. The ultimate goal of life is disillusionment. You referenced about 10 or so minutes ago about the folks whose land was dispossessed. And so, it's either on Netflix or Amazon Prime. It's the Silver Dollar Road.
Right.
The Silver Dollar Road is on Amazon Prime or on Netflix. and my wife and I watched it 3 days ago, and I really highly, you might have seen Jane Pittman, you might have seen many Black movies, but this one, and Raoul Peck, who, as you know, is so expert, this one is worth watching, even if you've never watched any of these. If you've never watched a Black documentary before, in fact, I would urge people when they watch it to forget about what they've seen before, just to try to pretend you're watching it for the first time, because it's so well done, and the testimonies, the I won't say caricatures, the people that are in it, you can identify. It's so easy to identify with your grandfather, your great grandfather, your great 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 grandfather, and to hear our song, to hear our pathos, as you say, our pathos and our song, and our testimony and our celebration all wrapped up. You may not know who W.B. Du Bois is, you may not know who Frederick Douglass is, but I am urging folks to watch this Silver Dollar Road. And again, you have to either have Amazon Prime or Netflix, because it's so remarkably and inspirationally sad but joyous, that same kind of false dichotomy thing wrapped up into so much. And plus it's inspirational in my mind at the end about this stony road that we trod,
Right.
but we're still on it. And the Silver Dollar Road, I don't have any stock in Netflix or Amazon Prime, but this is a free commercial that I'm urging people to kind of consider. The ultimate goal of life is disillusionment. The ultimate goal of life is disillusionment. We have about 10 or so, 12 minutes, Melky. Let's kind of delve into, and again, I apologize to someone that might want us to talk more about particular subtopics already, but this is just a teaser. And even before we conclude, remind people, and we'll say this at the end again, how people can find out about this particular, I'll say, when I say tome, it's not that it's the War and Peace length, but it's packed. It's packed and laden and fertile. So,
You can visit my website, anewwordmedia.com. That's ANUWORD media.com. You can also find me on Amazon. I'm on Amazon. All my books are there. And you can also follow me on Twitter at Melky J. Russell on Twitter. And those are the places where you can follow me and connect with me and find out more about my books. But this idea of disillusionment, and I use that in a way to draw people in, because we all deal with the whole idea of the matrix, and now scientists are talking about Earth as a simulation, because they realize that consciousness is not local. So where is it coming from then? Because they cut up pieces of the brain, they still can't find, well, where does consciousness emerge from? And so they know that it could possibly be a simulation, the whole idea of the matrix. But ancient people knew about this as well. They called the physical world Maya, which is the illusion. So people understood that the physical world is only part of this experience. But like in the Matrix, it is real, because if you died in the Matrix, then you died, even though it was, a simulation. So and if you look at books like the Kabbalion, they talk about, and this comes from the ancient Kemites, the ancient Egyptians. They say the universe is mental. This is what they say. The universe is mental, and that ties once again to the whole idea of the subconscious realm and the power that the subconscious realm has over our conscious self. So this whole idea of disillusionment is waking up from the illusion, the illusion of the physical world, the illusion of the material world. And as we talked about in our last show, we understand that matter in our universe only makes up about 3 or 4% of all the things in existence. The overwhelming majority is dark matter, and then dark energy. With dark energy, I think it makes up about 70%, dark matter about 27%. So that matter is a small percentage, but that's our whole world and universe. So this idea of waking up from the illusion is realizing that that is only a small part of the world that we live in. And it's also some of the things we talked about before, where life comes in waves, and as people are experiencing and things, and you're saying, I want to do this and do that, and you do this and do that, and then you realize that, well, you're still not totally at peace. And what we realize is that the material world the idea that the material world can solve all of our problems, that wealth, that prestige, all these other things can solve our problems, is an illusion as well. So once you start getting to the point where you're like, okay, I did all these things to get to here, and now that I'm here, I'm still not where I want to be. And then you start looking deeper at life. Then you say, okay, well, I've made more money than I can ever spend in my life. What really matters? Because now money doesn't really matter to me, or I've done this and that doesn't matter to me. I've achieved more fame than I ever thought possible. So, what really matters? And so waking up from the illusion allows you to put yourself in a position where you are really looking at the things that really matter. Like, what are the most important things to you? What are the most important things to life? When they talked to Dr. King, he said, when I'm on my deathbed, he said, don't talk about all of my awards. Tell them that Martin Luther King tried to love somebody. Those are the most important things. When you're on that bed and and they're like, you got 3 hours, what are you thinking about then? Are you thinking about, all the different things that you did or accomplished, or are you thinking about, what have I been able to do to help others? What are some of the good things that I've done? And that's part of waking up, from the illusion that you're not caught up in this material world. Material existence is good because it positions me to be able to help people. But it by itself, what meaning does it have? So so each of us are on our own journey to awaken from the illusion. For me, it was about really, really making a difference. I wanted to be a person that made a difference. And like they say, if you make a difference in one person's life, or some people make a difference in thousands of people's lives. But, I look to this as to talk about, one of my former teachers, Miss Sylvia Hare in Winchester. And she was a teacher for 27 years at Winchester School, and not really known beyond New Haven. But, when she had a going away party before she passed on, thousands of former students, came out to give her a shout. Because she was always there. So she made a difference, in our lives as individuals, particularly those kids growing up in the projects. I remember when I got out of high school, and then I spent my first year at college away, and I came back and I was kind of out of work and things like that. And Miss Hill would give me the keys to the gym. She would say, "Here, I trust you. Just bring them back." So I would be able to go to the gym, to play ball, to work out. And not only that, she would say, "Go downtown," and people back then, they'd tell you, "Listen, go downtown and sign up to be a substitute teacher." And she would tell me that, and then she would go and take days off where she would request that I come in so I could make a little bit of money. So so who's greater, and who's more, so that right there struck me as powerful.
Indeed.
And she's just one of several teachers and individuals and coaches, that I grew up with that made that type of difference.
Yes.
But,
We have about 3 or 4, 5 minutes, and before we go, I want to kind of conclude on the universe is mental. But in the chapter pertaining to the disillusionment, you make the nice analogy between someone driving and say a Mercedes and someone driving a hoopty. So bring it home very briefly for some folks that might be not necessarily lost in this metaphysical discussions we've had, but I think that hoopty versus the Mercedes analogy really kind of helps
Right.
to amplify.
Because the whole thing about the hoopty versus the Mercedes is the fact that we all, regardless of what we're driving, we're all on the same road. We all have to travel the same road of life. So I can be in a Mercedes, you could be in a hoopty, and you're looking at me and thinking that, well, I wish I was where he was at. And I could be in that Mercedes thinking, okay, I got no money in my pocket. I'm about ready to run out of gas. If I don't make a payment soon, they're gonna come take this.
Yeah.
But to the objective observer, I'm chilling. I'm just like,
Yeah.
So we don't know. And that's the thing about, life and struggle about, making assumptions that, okay, this person has it all together.
Yeah.
This person has these advantages and I don't have. And in some ways, sometimes they might, but it's not always that way, because along with they say, those to whom much is given, much is expected. So those that have more, sometimes more pressure and more weight is placed on them, and all you got to do is worry about your hoopty, but maybe his entire family is dependent on him.
Yes. Yeah.
And he's worried about, okay, I'm getting ready to crash, not literally crash, but I'm getting ready to go through some rough stuff, and now my whole family is going to fall with me. So we don't really know those things, but the general theme is that, regardless of what we're riding in or driving in, we're all on the same road. We all have to travel the same road. There's no special highways for the rich people, the famous people. Everybody's got to get stuck in that same traffic.
Let's take another 90 seconds as we conclude, Milk, in terms of the life and the human mind, and your last chapter about the just consciousness in general. I want to give you the last word in that regard.
Right. And people talk a lot about consciousness and what it means, and how to expand consciousness. And I think that there's a direct connection, like consciousness may be a term that people look at on a higher level, but there's a direct connection to the basic things, and as we started out talking about, what's happening in Gaza, and
yes,
the horrible situation there, and the need for peace there. And so, what does that mean in terms of, people's consciousness? You could know a lot, but sometimes you can make a difference, with a little, or with the proper stance or proper action. So what does that mean to people that are, hungry or starving, or living and dying, or being bombed? So so while on a spiritual and theoretical level, this whole thing is an important aspect of understanding who we are. What's the more important thing, in terms of, how we can make a difference in people's lives, and little things, like I can do a small thing to make a difference in people's lives. I don't have to break down their understanding of quantum mechanics or whatever, but I can do something nice for someone.
That's right.
Do something simple for someone, and kind of pass that on with, and with the hope that all of us continue to pass it on. So
excellent. Be kind, be loving, and you can work on that peace on earth, goodwill for women, children, and men. Women, children first. Melky, thank you so much, man. We will do it again. It's been a pleasure as always to talk to you, and just let's just continue to strive onward and upward.
All right, thanks a lot, Tom. Appreciate it.
Thank you, man.
All right.
Bye-bye.